Okay. All right. Does it look like we're recording on your guys' end? Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks guys for coming to this world premiere of the Affluent Effect. I'm super excited
Right?
to be teaching this. So we're just going to jump into what the Affluent Effect is, and what we're going to be talking about over the next 3 days. So today we're going to be talking about how to create predictable success.
Hey, sweetie, can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
I have this big thing that says this meeting is being recorded. Oh my
Click
God.
on it. Click on it
Oh
and
my
say
God.
like, yes,
I
I give
am
it
so
permission.
sorry I interrupted you to say that. I feel
Oh
so
my gosh, it's totally fine. That's how we roll around
I'm gonna
here.
mute myself.
It's totally good. So today we're going to be talking about the principles of creating predictable success. All right. So over my career, I have developed relationships with some really incredible people, people who are light years ahead of me in business. Hector and I are in a mastermind together, and there's some people in that community, including Hector. He's an amazing person who, they've just created some tremendous success in life. And how do we do that? Like, how do we go about creating success in a predictable way that is inevitable? So we're going to be talking about that. Tomorrow, I'm going to get into how do we add value to people who are of high net worth. So part of the affluent effect is about building relationships with people who are financially affluent. Now, you'll find out soon that I define affluence in a little bit of a different way than just financial or wealth. So we'll talk about what that looks like so that you can get into relationships with people who are, in positions of power, in positions of influence, who can really accelerate the results that you're looking to create by strategically getting into relationships with them. And then on the last day, we're going to talk about how do you actually get noticed? How do you go find those people? How do you create win-win relationships? And how do you really build a true, genuine relationship with somebody who, maybe other people would fangirl or fanboy, and you think, oh, there's no way I could get into a relationship with them. But there's actually a really easy way to get noticed and to build those types of relationships. So we're going to give you a little history lesson here on the word affluence, because I want us to be all on the same page about what affluence means inside of the affluent effect world. So in the 14th and 15th century, affluence was actually referred to in a couple of different ways. One was in regards to bodies of water. So it originates from the Latin verb affluere, meaning to flow abundantly. So think of like a giant river, right? A flow of abundance. It was also meant to represent an abundant supply of God's grace. So there was some faith-based undertones to the idea of affluence. And then about the 14th and 15th century is when it started to be used more in regards to financial wealth. And it sort of lost its meaning when it comes to this flow of abundance. And there's two reasons why I really love the word affluence and its meaning. And the first part is the verb to flow. So when I think of flowing, it's movement, it's action, it's momentum, right? We create that in our life as high performers, as entrepreneurs. We're always in action, and it's that action that is the antidote to our stuckness, right? And to flow abundantly, that means we are creating something with abundance and not scarcity, right? So we are developing these character traits of affluence, which are resilient. We're resourceful, we're undefeatable. We're the type of people who get back up no matter what happens, and we look for another way. We believe that there's always another way. There's a pathway through from where I am to where I want to go. And to me, that's a part of affluence. So affluence is this holistic approach, right? So the affluent effect is redefining the way that our modern world sees affluence. It's not just wealth, and it's not synonymous with elitism or I'll cut you to get to the top. I'll do whatever it takes as long as I'm making money. It's more about creating this flow of abundance in all the areas of our life. All right, now I can't not cover why I chose affect with an A instead of effect, right? So we've all heard of cause and effect, right? Cause is also, you can think of the word affect as like the word cause or like the word choice. They produce a result, right? They produce an effect. So when we implement an affluent effect in our lives, what we're doing is we're proactively choosing to have the mindset, to have the attitudes that then lead into the behaviors and the habits that create that flow of abundance for us. So you can think of the affluent effect as being in this state of life and being where you choose abundance, no matter what the situation is. All right. So I have told most of you on this call my story. I know Sean doesn't know, but I'm going to give you a bit of an overview. And there's also people who will be watching this recording. So a couple of years ago, I started studying what the affluent buyer wanted and what was the mindset of a person who has plenty of money and is happy to spend whatever money it takes. They're more of a value-based buyer than they are a price-conscious buyer. And I started understanding their perspectives. And as I did that, I had a realization that God is affluent. God, the universe, this is you can implement these things no matter where you are on a spiritual or religious scale. I personally am a Christian and I am going to refer to things in the terms of God. If that doesn't fit for you, just think in your mind, the universe or source or whatever that is. But for the purpose of this training, we're gonna go with God because I think He is a good, loving Father who is here to help us find abundance. So, in fact, I'm gonna stop sharing screen so I can actually like look at you guys for a minute here. Um, there. All right. So in January of this year, I had so many crazy things happen to me that left me in a place where I felt completely depleted and in lack. Um, from a professional standpoint, I was in a toxic business relationship that was really sucking the life out of me and draining everything that I had. In addition to that, I felt like it was keeping me from achieving my own personal and professional goals. And I felt so behind, like I had lost years of my life that I couldn't get back. I also ended up with the craziest thing. I'll give you the short version of the story, but I did a Oh, you're married to Marcy Dungan? Okay, sorry, I just scrolled. Sean is married to my best friend's little sister. That's how I don't know Sean or do know Sean. Okay, so in the very, very end of December, about a year ago, I did a workout that I was not ready for. I had had my baby 4 months earlier, and I was like, I have to get my body back. And I completely overdid it. I overexhausted I literally almost killed myself. I ended up in the ER. I had 800 times the amount of toxicity in my body from all of the proteins that were breaking down from my muscles. And my doctor walked in after he got my blood results and he looked at me and he said, the only time I see a toxicity level this high is if somebody jumps out of an airplane and their parachute doesn't go off. Like that's the damage that you did to your body. And it was really challenging for me. My arms were the place where the damage had happened. They had swollen up 2 or 3 times the size that they are. And I could not even lift a gallon of water. This was the water bottle that I used. And I'd have to rest it on my arm and hold it. I needed 2 hands to hold this dang water bottle. I couldn't even get a gallon of milk out of the fridge. Like that's how much muscle I had lost. And so my body was physically totally depleted and my spirit was so broken. I didn't hold my baby for about 5 weeks. My mother and mother-in-law came and literally would bring me the baby. I would nurse the baby and they'd take him back. And I just drank water and slept because I needed to recover physically. Um, and I had, 2 months after that, I ended up getting out of the business relationship that I was in. And it left me with a multiple 5 figures of revenue that I did not receive, that was withheld from me wrongly. And, I was speaking to lawyers and I was saying, "Oh, how do I get this money?" And it was such a toxic situation. I had multiple lawyers tell me, one specifically said, even if this was 100 grand, I would walk away from it. How am I supposed to walk away from all of that? I was in such a place where I could look at my life and say there was a lot of lack and there was a lot of scarcity. And I decided that I really did believe that God was abundant and that if I could let those things go and if I could choose to look for the abundance in my own life, that I could create it. And so that's when I actually started developing this framework of the affluent effect. And I feel like it was more of a spiritual download than it was, it doesn't belong to me. I feel like it's principles here. So it was trademarked and now you're at the world premiere. So congratulations for being here. Um, so there's the, the background, I suppose, on, uh, on the affluent effect. So let me jump back to the slides here. All right, thumbs up if you can see the slides again. Awesome. All right, so affluence turns out is an inside job. No matter what situation you are in, you can choose to create abundance and you can choose affluence in your life. Whether you are in Nicaragua, Peru, a third world country where you're living in a dirt hut and you're just trying to make ends meet and you're an entrepreneur and you're selling tchotchkes or you're selling guinea pigs or have a little corner market. I have been to those countries and seen people who are extremely abundant with their joy, their families, their relationship to God. And as they do that, they create more financial abundance in their life and they follow these same principles. Now, I've also seen people who are millionaires, even a billionaire, who don't have affluence in their personal relationships. Their marriage is broken. They're going through multiple marriages. Things are really challenging with their children and people take advantage of them. And so to me, affluence is creating this holistic approach to life. So now that we've gone through and sort of reframed what affluence is and how affluence shows up in not just our financial world, but physically, mentally, emotionally, our relationships, what I want to do is have a little bit of a dialogue with you guys. And so feel free to unmute, type in the chat. But what I want to know and I want to reflect on is, why is showing up with affluence in your life important to you? Or why is it important to your loved ones, your clients, or your greater community? What can affluence make possible when you are choosing proactively to create abundance in your life?
Great question. I guess I can go first.
Awesome.
um, Thank you, Natalie. I think it's almost like a spiritual awakening in you where you just have this aura about you that people are attracted to, because I've got some really high profile, high net worth clients that I've had for minimum like 7 years to over 20 years. And it's just building that relationship and not treating them any different, because I feel the same whether I'm talking to somebody that's homeless in downtown LA or a Fortune 100 client or an entrepreneur that's wildly successful. I kind of feel like it's kind of like a heart to heart type relationship, and feel I don't feel awkward. It's just a human connection. And if I can make that happen, then I'm golden.
I love that. And for everyone on the call or watching the recording, Hector is an amazing person. If you want to change the paradigm that you have of treating other people equally and with respect and that love and that heart connection, Hector is an amazing person to connect with. Um, and I as I have consulted people for the last 3 years on how to acquire affluent clients, one of the biggest challenges is that people see it as them versus me, and that there's this difference. And what I hear you saying, Hector, is that there's really a common theme, which is we're human. We have problems and challenges and heartaches and sorrows and beliefs. And when we can equalize that and not think that we need to put someone on a pedestal, or that we're better than or they're better than, but there's this heartfelt connection, it allows you to build relationships with people who perhaps pay you better than someone else, or people who have greater levels of influence who can refer you to other clients. And it really helps you accelerate your own results by being in those types of relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, really well said. Yeah, it's just so interesting, you know. I kind of feel like it's a challenge when I find someone that, like, I read body language really well. And if I've there was a Japanese client that I was introduced to, and I think he was 78 when I met him, and he was working every day, and he was a stern businessman. And I feel like I broke him because I hugged him and I showed him love. And every time after that, he expected a hug, and he had the biggest smile. And everyone else was bowing down to him that worked for him, you know, bowing down and just very, very submissive. And I was just like, I just showed him some love, man. I just gave him a big hug, and you know, and it was, I got to love on this man for 10 years until he passed away. Right. And he shared his life with me, and it was just so beautiful relationship. So that's kind of how I roll.
Wow, that's incredible. And, just because people have an abundance of wealth doesn't mean that they don't have an abundance of other things, right? And as we implement the affluent effect in our own life, we're raising the level of our abundance in all areas of our life, especially in the love and connection and trust places. So,
Yeah.
okay, William, you got to pop off. No problem. Sean, I know you have to chat. Crystal, you had mentioned safety in the chat. Do you want to tell us a little more about what that means?
I think with regard to, and this is, and I've heard that women just, this is how we kind of operate. Our operating system is in safety, and that's, goes back to tribal, I'm sure. But that's probably why we get married, right? And to procreate. But there's like an underlying reason that we all do things. And one of the main reasons they say for women to do certain things is like safety is like our main reason. And I am a risk taker. So I'm always trying to manage both. But I have worked with clients that are on their last dime. And that is stressful because I take that stress on myself because I don't know. There's the term empath. I'm empathetic. I'm super compassionate, and I've worked with those, and I've worked with people that are fluent, that have money. And so it's less stress. Okay. And so even though my heart tends to want to help those that aren't affluent in their business to get their income up, I've had to shift because of safety, because I'd actually, in the beginning of my business, actually was about the third year, I started with my marketing going wide. Wide net was attracting other single moms, and it affected me. It affected me in terms of stress. It affected me emotionally, but it also put me in a bind when they couldn't pay me, and yet I was giving and not receiving. So I had to switch. So that's where I say safety. So it's safer. And then I had to create other programs, lower tier programs, or just be like super high valuable with my marketing to help those that were still in that place. But it's safety. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. And it reminds me of something that was covered in the mastermind that I attended in Newport Beach, and Hector was there. and we were talking about the different types of agreements that we have with other people. And it's on a scale from kind of like a lose-lose up to a win-win. And the threshold that you cross when you are living in an abundant place versus scarcity is that the interactions that we have with other people, particularly clients or business deals, it's either a win-win or no deal. And so while our heart can, be driven to serve maybe a wide variety of people, it's always important for us to put ourselves first. And though for me, I was taught that that was selfish, and I'm realizing as an adult that
Yes,
that's actually not true. It's
I
the
actually,
most
yes.
selfless thing.
And I think a lot of women were taught that. And I have, I even wrote a story about that in my book, Unleash Your Moxie, because my brothers would go make money with their paper route. I was like their helper. If I went to go make money, I was literally told to go give it back.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that affected me. Isn't that interesting?
That is, yeah. So I love this because I think that a part of creating predictable success, it all starts from within. Like, this is really an inside out job. And we're going to talk about some of that today. A lot of what we're talking about is kind of the outside part of it, but there's there's such an important paradigm that we need to live inside of when we are developing affluence for ourselves, so that we stay in that place of safety and the place of capacity where we're not slowly burning out and depleting our own selves, but we're growing in literal net worth, but also in our own capacity to love and hold space for other people. So um awesome. Okay, I just want to read what Sean wrote here. He said, probably the time in my life when I was most affluent would be when I served a mission for my church. Spending all my time learning to communicate with, serve, and love everyone I came in contact with helped to change my life and theirs. Causing change in their lives and changing mine every day served to help the individual, the family unit, and the community. It's incredible what one person can do and accomplish. Yeah, I love that. And for me, I've really been thinking a lot about, I have 4 children, and I've been thinking about how do people generate multi-generational wealth? How do I take the things that my grandma and my grandma's grandma, kind of these habits, stereotypes, and stories that I want to shift and break, and how do I make an impact for generations on the way that um, my children live from the inside out. And so that to me is a reason why it's so important to show up with affluence in all of my being, because it just lifts everybody. It's like a rising tide lifts all boats. So, my question to you, and you can think about this, you can share if you want to, but how do you want affluence to show up for you in the next 12 months, the next 12 or the next 10 years, and the generations after you? It's a really big question. So we'll maybe spend a moment of quiet just to maybe ponder that. You share or not, but how do you want affluence to contribute to the way you're showing up in life that impacts the next 12 months, the next 10 years, or maybe even multiple generations after you?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is I think of my kids first and what it can do for them. But I think of time, right? Because when I was working really hard before I started my business and working really hard, and I was away from my kids unnecessarily because I didn't realize that really what an entrepreneur even was. No one talked about it when I grew up. But then I started my business, and I started having extra money to spend on them, having extra time. That flexible schedule made all the difference. And I knew I would never go back, because I was always, when I was working for someone else, I was choosing the job over my kids. Then I was able to choose my kids over everything else with that flexibility. So that was the first thing. But now I see that I want to create more time with them with really rich experiences, like going to
Mm.
Greece with my daughter in February. I mean, that's really special. And their father just passed away last year, and you know that, Natalie. And so that actually makes you really, I mean, my kids are only in their 20s, they've lost their dad, and that has made me look at time even more.
Mm.
So money, affluence, it's smarter and it gives you more time.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to start a nonprofit, and I want to teach my kids what I'm doing. They've seen a lot of it, but I want them to kind of take the reins when I leave the planet someday.
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of just living like a rich and full life, whether that be, with millions or not. It's
Mm.
about a rich, meaningful life that you design, that's not determined by, oh, you need to have a 9-figure business, or you need to do this or that in order to have enough or to be enough.
Mhm.
But it's rather about being who you are and creating what you want so that your life is what you want it to be. And I think that's also an extremely attractive way to show up for the relationships we have in our lives.
I think that constantly being present, and I'm definitely a work in progress, but being present it can be magical. It's kind of sad, but you know, I think having a business, sometimes you're so caught up in time, like, and like, I have a habit of, oh, I got to be there at 10 o'clock. I can do this before I go, and I can do this and this and this and that. And next thing you know, I show up 10 minutes after 10 and I'm apologizing. So I tend to put too much on my plate, but I'm cognizant of that. I realize that. And I figured, if I can just not do anything hastily, like just show up and be present. And I've got a beautiful client. She's like 24. Her and her dad are both vegan. And they prepared a lunch for me. It was the only time that I can say I've been with um, quote unquote successful people that they were 100% present with me. Like,
Hmm.
they've got, dad's very successful, but it was like they prepared lunch, put some tunes on, some jazz, low decibel, and we were just with each other, and time escaped us. It wasn't like they were looking at their phone. It wasn't like they were like waiting for me to leave. There was no rush. It was just we were present, and it was just like a beautiful thing that I relish. It's like I want more of that, and I want to provide that to someone else.
Yeah. And I feel almost like how juicy and wonderful that moment was. And I mean, like you said, it's priceless, right? Like, sure, it cost whatever a vegan meal costs to prepare, right? But there's so many things that are more valuable than just money. And money is incredibly wonderful and important. And, you know, it lives contextually in our lives. And so we have to not forget the whole rest of the context of life and what brings us joy and satisfaction. Um, so Sean in the comments here mentioned that in the next 12 months, he's trying to start his first business and has no idea what he's doing, but wants his daughter to never lack anything she needs. And then mentioned that in 10 years is hoping to be in a career I enjoy, whether that's an entrepreneur or a pediatric oncologist, doing everything I can to help others with what I have and what I've been given. Generations, I want to start nonprofits and foundations to continue helping others once I'm gone. I plan to die broke, giving whatever I have left to others. That's awesome. All right, so let's jump into these 4 principles. As I have mentioned, affluence does have roots in faith. So again, I am not going to apologize for using a scripture from the Bible. If you are not a Christian, Christianity is the largest religion in the world. There's about 2 billion people who belong to that faith. And I think that it's I think that the life of Jesus Christ has had an impact on so many people, and whether or not, people share the same beliefs as me about him is irrelevant. What is relevant is the teachings that come from the Bible. So in Luke chapter 2, verse 52, in the King James translation, it says, it's talking about when Jesus was a child and growing up. And it said, and Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. All right. So wisdom, stature, favor with God, and favor with man all relate to the four intelligences that Stephen Covey talked about every single human being having. So those are our mind, our body, our spirit, and our heart. And these four things also correlate with the four laws of affluence. So just as Jesus grew up and, developed personally, we also are on this journey of becoming more of who we are. And so these four areas create this process that is our process of creating predictable success. So the first part of this is our personal, well, it's what I call our personal internal commitment. So this is related to our spirit. This is related to this drive, this vision that we have for our lives, the things that we want to create. So, all of you on the call talked about kind of what was meaningful to you from how I live every day, but also the impact I leave on my children and the generations that I want to impact. And so having that personal internal commitment is so, so important. The way I think about it is, when you're on an airplane and the hostess gets on and they're like, all right, here's our safety brief. Like, make sure that your seatbelt's buckled. And if the air thing comes down, do this and do that. And half the time we're just like, on our phones, doing whatever. We're getting our headphones, we're getting situated, and we're not really listening, right? Well, if you imagine that you're flying and all of a sudden you look out the window and the airplane wing is on fire, all of a sudden your awareness and your commitment to listening to the stewardess get on and say, grab the life jacket from underneath your seat, everybody stay calm, everybody, you're going to start listening to those instructions with some like serious vigor, right? And so when we show up to life with that type of commitment and vigor and exhilaration to the things that we want to create, that's where I feel like the magic really begins. And part of that is being clear about what it is that you want to create and not basing it off of what other people tell you you should do, or people misdiagnosing tactical solutions for you, but really looking at what is it that makes me, Hector, feel amazing and alive, and that I'm engaging my strengths and the talents that I have, right? It's going to be different for Crystal. It's going to be different for Sean. It's going to be different for me. But when we can find that internal commitment and resolve, that's where this success starts. After that, of course, we have to take action. We've got to be in action. We've got to be executing. We've got to be doing the work that it takes in order to produce the results we desire. As we're taking action, then we start to get feedback. So, feedback for me today, I had 5 people show up, right? I know William had to drop off. We've got, well, I guess I'm number 4, so 3, 4 people show up, right? So I've got 3 people on the call. That is data. That's information. That's feedback for me. That's reflective of the actions I took before this here. So we're constantly able to receive feedback. And if we can measure and manage that, then we can make adjustments. We can pivot. We can see what's working and what's not working. And when we're willing to be on the surface of that, we can start to say, hey, I'm going to do more of this because it's creating what I want.
What is the greatest compliment?
Or you can say, I'm going to start doing less of this because it's not creating what I want. But you have to have that accountability and that measurement in your life in order to continue to create success. Okay, and then the last part of this is that we need other people involved with us. right? If you were to wake, I always tell this to my husband, just imagine you go to bed tonight and you have the most wonderful night's sleep and you wake up all alone and you go outside and there's nobody here and you walk into, you go to New York City and there's nobody there. You're the only person left on planet Earth. Life would not have a lot of meaning without other people, right? We are as humans, we require not just engagement and interaction to be healthy and happy, but to really find fulfillment. And so when we enroll others in our vision, in this, personal internal commitment that we make, we are, we can be literally enrolling clients. We could be, finding partners who are creating experiences and success with us. Maybe we're finding mentors. Maybe it's just peers, but we need people in our life to help create more of what we want to. All right, so for the rest of the training, and we'll start warming up today as we finish up today's topic. We're going to warm up for tomorrow, but of these 4 different areas, this training is specifically going to be focused on our relationships with other people. So there are 4 different relationships that I dive into when I talk about the affluent effect. And they're broken into our personal relationships versus professional relationships, as well as our internal and external relationships. So it starts off always with our own internal relationship with ourself, which is our own leadership. Okay. It also, personally, we move into our external relationship with others. That's our network and our mentors, even our peers. The professional relationships we have inside of our companies is our team. It's how we build our culture. It's how we expect other people to treat each other. And then lastly, the external relationships we have in our professions are the relationships with stakeholders, clients, and, board members, people like that who have influence and sway on our business. So we're going to just focus the rest of today, Tuesday and Wednesday, on how to build a high net worth network and how to acquire affluent clients and develop strong relationships with our stakeholders. So there's a couple of strategic advantages of why you should do this. Okay. And there are so many. I'm going to go on a little tiny soapbox for a hot minute. There's a lot of information that is out in the world about what it is to create success. And I will say, don't listen to me. Don't listen to anybody. Listen and discern for yourself what you think and what you feel is true. I personally believe that there is a strategic advantage in building an affluent network and acquiring affluent clients. And here's 5 reasons why. High net worth individuals have more disposable income to spend. So they're more likely to be spending, especially in a time right now where there's a recession, where there's inflation, where home prices are going up, where interest rates are going up, where the supply chain is blocked up and crazy. And they're more likely to be spending money over the next 2 or 3 years than a low income, maybe middle class family, because they have to tighten things up. And there's so many people, I would say the masses don't live in this mindset of affluence. They can choose it, but they need to come to my training if they're going to do that, right? Okay. So the second reason is because high net worth individuals right now are going to take advantage of the discounts that are happening. So talent, right? There's, I think, 11,000 people that just got laid off in the Bay Area. I mean, there's so much talent that is going to be looking for jobs. And so talent is going to be cheaper because more people are in need of jobs, right? Products, even property. There are things that are going to be sold at a discount because of inflation, because of what's going on. I mean, Crystal's like really involved with some really cool and nuanced ways of investing money. And so people with the cash to do that are going to be the ones who are going to be able to take advantage of that. Again, number 3 is the middle class is more willing to spend right now than people who are tightening their wallets. So Sean, talking about wanting to start a business right now, when you're looking at the type of client to serve, I would say it's strategic for you to consider finding somebody who does have more disposable income and is willing to spend to solve their problems. Um, the fourth reason is that highly successful people are typically very well networked. They are willing, when they build a relationship with somebody that they trust, they're willing to refer you out. I mean, I'm sure, Hector, you've got experience with being referable, right? So it's a very specific skill set to be referable. You've got to have the right character and the right skills. And, that is how business is done. You don't see Facebook ads for McLarens and for Ferraris, right? There's just a different way that higher net worth and highly successful people interact, hire, and find service providers. And then the last thing is that working with people who are affluent are easier to work with and more enjoyable to do business with. When you have people who are very price conscious, they tend to get really stressed out. They tend to nitpick. They tend to cross like scope creep, right? They'll ask for more than what they paid for. And that just becomes a challenge as a service provider. It kind of really sucks when you're dealing with that and you're like, look, I have done so much for you that's worth way more than what you've paid me. And yet you're still asking me for more. They just expect way too much. And so it's just not a fun place to be. So to wrap things up and to help me prepare for how I can best serve you guys tomorrow, my question is, and maybe you guys don't feel this knowing who you guys are on the phone, but what do you feel like is keeping you stuck from building relationships with affluent mentors, clients, and peers? Or if you don't feel stuck, what have you seen other people be stuck with, so that the people watching the recording, we can also make sure to address some of those challenges that people have?
Great question. Got to think about that for a minute.
And I mentioned this earlier, I'll say one of the things that I see people and people who I know are going to be watching this recording is they say, how on earth am I supposed to provide value for them? They're so successful. They have everything they need. What could I possibly bring to the table? And I think that we each can add value to other people's lives. And yeah, there does need to be some context to how we add value. For example, I was watching a video of Brad Pitt, and he was talking about Sandra Bullock and how Sandra was just such a dear friend and so wonderful because he was throwing a party one time and it was the next day and he was like scrambling to get things done. And he's like, I knew I could call Sandy up and she would be over there, no problem, to help me out. Right now, look, could I go help Brad Pitt throw a party? Totally. I know how to throw parties, right? Do I know Brad Pitt? Does he trust Natalie Champlin? No, he doesn't know me at all, right? And so there's no reason for Brad to call Natalie when he could just call Sandra, right? And so when we are building relationships with people, there has to be context and there has to be relevance and trust. And so learning how to create that with others and learning how you do fit in and where you don't fit in, I think that's an important part. And not taking those things personally. Like, I don't take it personally that Brad Pitt didn't call me, right? He doesn't even know me. but when we're surrounded with people that we see and we know, yet we're wondering, how come they're not calling me? Why are they not? What? There could be a number of reasons why, and we're going to cover those reasons on days 2 and 3 in this training.
Cool.
So fabulous. All right. Well, if you guys have, if any other questions pop up about like, hey, how do I do this? Or this, I feel like I have no understanding. Let me know. Let's see. Sean has a comment here I'm going to read. I was a chemistry major and now in medical school. Everyone I come into contact with has one thought in mind, and that is to study to become a doctor. The more I am here, the less I relate to their mindset. They are all very complacent where things are, but they complain about system faults, but don't want to ever be anyone to try and change anything or think differently or be creative. Everyone here that could be a mentor will tell me to quit trying to start a business and focus on medical school. So I don't know who to talk to or who to reach out to. It's because of this struggle that I've had, that my wife told me about the presentation that you're doing. She thought you could help me. That's super awesome. Yeah. So Sean, what my recommendation would be is to get around people who do believe in you and what you believe is possible, because anything is possible. If you go tell Elon Musk that he can't, and he just will. And you know, you go talk, and it's not just people like Elon and Steve Jobs and these like highly successful, very, very visible people, but there are plenty of people who have, very small social followings, yet have massive, massive success. And when you start to change the people that you surround yourself with, you start to adopt the habits and beliefs and mindsets that they have. And so I would strongly encourage you to take a look at who are the 5 people you're spending the most time with. And maybe you can't change the fact that you're in school with them, or that they're your professor, or that they're your classmate. But what you can do is you can start reading books, listening to podcasts, getting on trainings like this, joining communities where people are willing to listen to you and support you with what you truly want. And I would say stay true to yourself and to your heart, and don't let anybody tell you what you can and can't do, because success is inevitable when we go back to this. How do I go back a slide? When we go back to, sorry, I have to stop sharing screen for a second, that process that I showed you, those 4 steps. Here we go. Can you see this? This predictable success, your personal internal commitment, that is yours. Do not let anybody take that away from you. Whatever it is that you want to create, it's really simple, though I won't say it's necessarily easy, but you have to be so committed. Just like when that plane is going down and you're like, I am not going down without a fight. Like, I'm going to survive this plane crash. Like, I'm going to listen. I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to find a way. That starts with this personal internal commitment. Then you take action. Then you see and you pivot from there, and you get yourself in relationship with other people to support you along that journey. So thank you guys so much for being here today. We're going to call it for the day, but we'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we'll be talking about the 7 different life currencies that create value for people who are high net worth, and how you can leverage those currencies in your marketing, in the way that you sell, in the way that you talk about yourself and your services, so that you become a really attractive offer to the people who you are looking to work with. So thank you guys so much for
Awesome.
being here.
I got one quick comment. Crystal, you were talking about how you sometimes get these clients and they don't have money. I think that's everybody, right? And putting
Well,
things
yeah,
in
they say that, I mean, if you look at the stats on income and how people spend their money, yeah. And yeah, so I had to really be careful with my marketing and who the words I would use and who I attracted and who I let in. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think maybe naturally most people go into business because they want to help somebody, and they think they can help them better than
Somebody else.
like I feel like I've helped people that I haven't even met. Like, I've branded something, I've designed a package and a website because this woman is just a beautiful soul. She's lives in Wisconsin, she's got a wonderful product, and she has no money. So I have done that, but we have to be very selective with who we do that for,
Right.
and guard our own self, because everyone, if we give it away for free, everyone will take it.
Right.
So
And when you have the wealth, you can do that. You can,
yeah,
Yes.
and when you don't have it, you can't, because you don't have the
right,
time.
right. So it's kind of like that old adage, stepping over dollars to get pennies. We can't do that. And then we got to kind of trim the tree. And I have got an associate who fires his bottom 3 clients every year. Once a year, he does a trimming.
Interesting.
And it's like, and it's not necessarily who pays him the least, but who's taking from him the most time, energy, effort, right?
80-20 rule, right? 80-20
Yeah,
rule.
yeah, sure.
I
So
think that
beautiful
goes back
conversation.
to I think it goes back to what you were saying, Crystal, about creating safety, right? In order for you
Yeah.
to be able to show up and serve and have this impact on the most amount of people possible, it does require money, and it does require yourself to be in a place of stability. And, a lot of us were taught that you should give, 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 give. And
Yeah.
it's about learning to receive too. And
Yeah, it's more important to give. It's more, yeah.
yep,
That is only in certain situations.
yeah, yep.
It's a
Business is
confusing message.
business.
It's a confusing message for kids. Although I mean, even though there are necessary components to it, it's confusing. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you,
Awesome.
Natalie.